Hello book besties, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hi, hello, my name is Tessa. I love to read and I love to talk about books, and in today's video I thought we would do a little mini book haul of some books I picked up for Black Friday. If you live in Canada, you probably know that the price of books is literally astronomical. I would say on average a single book costs about $25, which is criminal. That's insane. So any opportunity I get to pick up books for a discount price, I am on it. And I was able to get some books from the Book Outlet and Indigo. If you haven't heard about the Book Outlet, they basically sell like overstocked books. I've never had a bad experience with the quality of the book. Sometimes they'll come with like a little mark on the top or like a slight little scuff on the cover, but they sell the books for a really great price. I think I was able to pick up like 6 or 7 books for $7.99 each, which was amazing. And then I also picked up a few books from Indigo and those were 30% off. Starting off with the books from the Book Outlet, I first picked up One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book follows Emma and she ends up marrying her high school sweetheart, who I think he's like a production assistant, but he ends up going to a different country on a helicopter, which unfortunately crashes. She thinks that he's died. She moves back to her hometown to kind of restart her life, and she ends up seeing an old friend, Sam, and falling in love again. Years after the crash happens, turns out her husband, Jesse, actually didn't die and he's now returned. So this sounds like a love triangle. I recently finished reading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely loved it. It was super fast-paced and action-packed, so I really think I will enjoy this book as well. I also picked up Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I actually have not read any of her books, but I've heard really great things. This book is about Alexis, and she's an ER doctor. She ends up meeting Daniel, and it seems to be like an age gap. I think she's 10 years older than he is, and she's an ER doctor. Her parents want her to live out this legacy of being like a great surgeon, but when she meets Daniel, he is from a small tight-knit town. He's a carpenter, and he basically turns her world upside down. This sounds like a great palate cleanser because I've been reading a lot of fantasy books and I really just want to dive into a fast-paced romance book, so I think that I will really enjoy this. Speaking of authors I've never read before, I picked up Riley Sager's The Only One Left. This is a fast-paced thriller book, and it follows Lenora, who is a sole survivor of a mass murder that happened to her family, which she was a suspect for, but she denied it, and they have no proof that she committed the murders. Years later, she hires a caretaker named Kit, and Kit is writing the story of what happened. I believe they're trying to clear Lenora's name, but actually ends up discovering Lenora might not be as good as she seems. I've heard that there's a lot of plot twists in this book. A lot of people either love it or hate it, so I will have to read it and determine for myself. Speaking of thriller books, I picked up another one called Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. This follows a serial killer who escapes and ends up going on a murdering spree again. And 2 women are brought together and they end up trying to ask questions that no one has ever asked and basically, I think, solve the identity of the serial killer. I'm not too sure, but this certainly seems like a very interesting book. It feels like it reflects true crime, which I love good true crime. I love true crime I love true crime podcasts and TV shows, so this seems right up my alley. Then I picked up Hello Stranger by Catherine Center, and this book is about Sadie, who ends up going blind after an accident, and as she's trying to rebuild her life and learn her new ways as someone who's visually impaired, she ends up meeting not one but two love interests. So again, this seems like a love triangle, which you can't go wrong, and I'm looking forward to reading this book. Then into some fantasy reads, I picked up Six of Crows, which looks like they made a TV show. I've never seen it. I've only heard hype about this book. Everyone seems to love it, and I don't know too much about it, if I'm being honest with you. I think it's 6 people who are on a heist. It seems like it's really fast-paced, full of action. Honestly, can't go wrong. I think it also might be a part of duology, maybe a series. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm excited. If it's worth the hype, I'm really hoping so. And the last book I picked up from the book outlet was Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco, if I said that correctly. I think that this is actually a standalone fantasy book. I do think there's a book after this, maybe even 2. I could be wrong, but you can read this as a standalone, which I find is not very common, especially for fantasy books. Most of them tend to be a part of a long series. So this is kind of refreshing just to pick up and be able to read and not think about it again. But I've heard, again, really great things about this. People seem to love it, and I'm excited. I'm excited to read it. I have a few other fantasy series I'm in the middle of, so maybe I will read this if I need a little break. Those were all the books that I picked up from Book Outlet, but I did pick up a few books from Indigo. They were 30% off, and the first one I picked up is A Little Life. If you've seen any of the other videos on my channel, you probably have heard me talk about this book quite a few times and how much I want to read it. I did download a copy of it on my Kindle, but I wanted to actually pick up the physical copy. This is a book that I fear I might need to be in a better headspace to read. It is apparently a beautiful story, but absolutely heartbreaking. The topics that are discussed in this book are a lot. If this is something that you're interested in, definitely look at the trigger warnings. I think there's quite a few for this one, but when I'm in the right headspace, I will certainly be reading this. Then, of course, I had to pick up another fantasy book, which is When the Moon Hatched. And how could I not? Look at how beautiful these sprayed edges are. This was also part of the 30% off, even with the sprayed edges. I actually don't really know too much about this book and what it's about, but I've seen a lot of people reading it, absolutely loving it. I presume it's going to be a part of a series, so I'm going to start this soon. I also picked up another fantasy book, which is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This one has been on my radar for a while. It's based in France back in 1714, or at least it starts in 1714, when Addie meets a stranger. She makes a deal to live forever, but the caveat to that is everyone she meets forgets who she is. This sounds like it's going to be a great book. I've, again, only heard really good things about this, so definitely want to read this. It is a standalone. It's not a part of a fantasy series, but it is a fantasy book. And last but not least, I'm so lazy to go over and take them all off of my bookshelf, but I ended up getting the last 4 books of the Throne of Glass series. Since they're so freaking expensive, just as they are, 30% off, I could not pass up the offer. I have not even started reading Throne of Glass. I'm still reading ACOTAR. I have the last book in the series left, but after I finish ACOTAR, I'm gonna read Throne of Glass, and yeah, I could not pass up the offer. If they're $25 each and getting 30% off, to me, that's a good deal. But those are all of the books that I got for Black Friday from Book Outlet and Indigo. If you picked up any of these books as well, let me know down in the comments below. I'm happy to discuss. And that's everything for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!